We are live. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Live Lounge, the iStorm Live Lounge, which is currently in lockdown mode. So what we do is that I bring people on board via Zoom. And today I've got a really, well, it's quite a special topic that we're going to talk about. And that's what iStorm, the Live Lounge, is for. I want to invite people to talk about things that we might not normally want to talk about, or just people with expertise around topics that are inspiring, share some motivational thoughts, and just bring light on different things that's going on right now or in general in our lives. So today I've invited Jo Tocher, and we are going to talk about death. And this is, of course, quite scary. It's all around us at the moment. And I don't know if we've kind of developed a culture here in the West where we're not really good at handling death anymore, because we've distanced our culture so much from death. So we're just not used to seeing people die around us unless it's very old people or very sick people. So I just wanted to address this topic because a lot of people are feeling quite fearful at the moment. People are worried and anxious, and of course children are anxious. So Jo, welcome to the Live Lounge. You are a emotional loss specialist. And first of all, I just want to hear, how are you doing? How are you holding up at the moment?
Hi, Me. Thank you very much for inviting me on. It's a pleasure to be here. And even though this isn't such a great topic to talk about, it's one that we do need to address. I'm doing okay. I have quite a positive outlook on life anyway. So I am fortunate in that I haven't been touched by anybody recently who has been affected by the virus. So I lost my parents in the last 5 months ago, my mother and my father 18 months ago. So my elderly parents have gone. And to be honest, I'm really grateful that they're not here to have to go through this and maybe, just more to worry about with them, and that they've been released from this situation, as it were. So I've done my grieving, and I'm pretty good, really.
That's good to hear, obviously, and I'm really sorry about your loss. It's not that long ago, so to be able to cope and pick up after that, it's quite, I've done a good job with that. But this is also why you're here. You are an emotional loss specialist, and you also have personal experience. So this topic around death, it's I feel, is it a bit taboo? Do we want to talk about it?
I think it's a very taboo. I think we don't want to face it. We do bury our heads in the sand a little bit around it, because it's something that makes us feel very uncomfortable about and very fearful of. And we all know at some point in our lives that our parents will go before us, mostly. And we know that that's going to happen. We don't really want to look at it too much, too closely. So it does become a taboo subject, and I think it becomes sort of an awkwardness actually around with a lot of people. And I know that if you have had a bereavement, often people don't know what to say to you. They don't know how to treat you. You hear the stories of somebody walking along the street, and someone goes to the other side of the road, so they don't have to say anything. This is what happens in the West. We are not good. We are not good at talking about death. It makes us uncomfortable. We don't know what to say. It's a very emotional subject. And you know what? If anything comes out of this virus that's positive, maybe it could be that. Maybe it's, we've got a much more healthy kind of view around death, and able to talk about it more freely, and that would be a good step in the right direction.
So what do you think are the most common reactions to death?
Wow. Do you mean with us individually or with other people?
Yeah, I think I think individually we react differently, don't we? So there are probably a set of normal reactions that we all kind of fall into first,
Yeah.
and that's why it's difficult for other people. If we don't know what they are and how we actually feel, then it's of course even more difficult to address it and approach someone who's lost someone. So are there normal reactions, or are we all completely different, do you think, how we react when we lose someone?
I think there's an overall kind of overarching theme, which is is followed basically by the wheel of grief. So when we first hear the news, we go into into shock mode, and our body kind of shuts down, and we might. It's like it's as if we're being pulled down with our body somehow, and we're a little bit discombobulated. So our head is thinking one thing, and our body is quite slow to move. And I know in my situation, my body became quite weak. All I wanted to do was to just sit down, but yet my mind was, and you go into this place where you can't really make decisions. It's sort of it's a fight or flight mode, fear is activated, and our adrenaline, it's as if we're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. Our cortisol is pumping and our adrenaline is pumping. So it depends what type of person you are. It can either really slow you right down in the shock mode, or some people are like an electric, the Duracell bunny that never stops. So they just go, their body's on full alert. So they're running around the house, or, I mean, I don't mean literally running around the house, but they're in production mode. So, all right, we've got to get this done, and they don't stop to just literally absorb it. So I think it depends on the type of person that you are. And then you get to this, like, the denial piece, where you can't really believe that it's happening. And you just go, no, this can't be happening, especially around now with this virus. I know a lot of people are, we were in denial for such a long time. It's not going to happen in the UK. It was, okay, it's happening in China and it's happening in Italy, but surely it's not going to happen in the UK. So we go into this denial, and then it hits us. And then the emotions start to come in.
And do you think is it important to grieve? Is there a journey that would be the healthiest way to adapt to a loss that you think someone can prepare for?
We can't really force our journey around that. It is something, I mean, when we're in the situation, we just have to go through what we're feeling. But if we're more aware of what we're going through, then it seems to make it easier. So when we get to the shock and the denial bit, and then the emotions and the pain starts to come in. So that's, we feel sad and we're upset, and that's the real painful part. And then quite often we get angry. So anger comes out in really strange ways. We're either angry with the world and everybody in it, or we fly off the handle at our loved ones about such inconsequential things that you wouldn't normally get angry about, which is interesting. And then you sort of realize, oh, okay, I think I might have overreacted and got angry about that. I remember when I was talking to something happened at school with my daughter, and I absolutely flew off the handle, and she said to me, in a typical teenage way, "It's not that deep, Mum. Why are you getting so upset?" And I went, okay, yeah, no. I just sort of brought myself back to myself and thought, yeah, it's my anger, it's my grief playing out. So that's coming out. So it's good to be aware of these things. And then we often go into the depression mode, which is where we feel heavy, listless, lethargic. We can't bother to do everything. Feel a little bit, the whole world is spinning and going on as normal, and we aren't. And then we come out of that and we get a bit more, it's called the upward turn. We get a little bit more optimistic, and we start to feel a bit more energy, and we start to be able to cope with more things. And then we get to that hope and acceptance part, which is when you start to accept what's happened, and you start to be able to feel happiness again. You can feel joy. Sometimes it takes a long time to feel joy after grief, and then you come in and you think, oh, I'm starting to feel a bit happier today. That's great. It's such a lovely feeling. But to prepare ourselves in advance is quite a difficult thing. I mean, for example, I knew that it wouldn't be too much longer before my parents passed away because they were elderly. And I wanted to, in my mind, make the most of the time I had with them. So we can do that. We can be more present with them. If they don't live close to us, and right now we're separated. So it's a case of just getting on Skype or Zoom or picking up the phone. Elderly parents really like that. But if you can, get them into Zoom when you can see them, it's amazing. And it's just spending as much quality time with them. And if you can't, write them a letter. There's nothing nicer than a letter, and just telling them how you feel about them, because we don't tell people enough how much they mean to us, do we? And it's only afterwards, when we think about that person, once that person's gone, and we think about all how amazing they were, and you sit back and you reflect. And if you do have a funeral or a celebration of life, you always write, the eulogy is always about the amazing times that you had with them, or the fun times, the great times. And we don't ever tell people that. Well, not enough anyway. So I think that would be
not in our culture, do we? It's a very Western kind of thing, and especially in Northern Europe, we can't say I love you to our parents. I grew up in a house, we loved each other very much, we still do, they're still there, but we never ever used the phrase I love you. It was just not done. We had other phrases that we used instead, which we all knew it means I love you, but to say that to my mum and dad straight out it's very difficult, because it's not done in their generation, I think. And with my son, we say it 20 times a day, and it's changed to be a little bit more open about that, I think. But at the same time, you can't share it enough, can you? You can't say it enough. Or as you say, write a letter if you can't reach them. But it's so important.
Yeah, it really is so important. And it alleviates guilt. This is what, if you don't, afterwards you go through this sort of the guilt phases. Actually, I forgot to say that in the wheel. There's the guilt and the bargaining. So you keep saying, oh, if I hadn't have done this, then that might have happened. If I'd have only told them this, if I'd have only, you start doing this, the guilt plays out and the bargaining comes in. But if you can put aside if there's any differences, put aside your differences, and tell them how much they mean to you, it makes an enormous difference when you do lose that person, because you don't have the guilt, you don't have it as much. I mean, we always have guilt. It always happens. The tiniest little inconsequential things we sort of often feel guilty about, but it's not so deep. So that, I think that would be my one big piece of advice beforehand. Tell them everything you want to, and when you can, and how much they mean to you. And if you've been wanting to say something, just say it. And it's easy to write it all down, actually. Sometimes we find it difficult to say things to people, but writing it down, if we journal it out first and write it down, all the amazing things, and then just send it in a letter, a love letter.
Exactly, a love letter, why not? It's beautiful. Thank you for that. And I think it's really important to share that journey of grief and of loss, what stages you need to go through, because it's of course really hard for everyone. But if we do have a similar journey that needs to happen, then there's nothing wrong with being aware of that to get support in understanding what you're going through, isn't it? When you start snapping at your family or you start losing track of things, I think that's really valuable. Do you think we react the same way, men and women, to loss?
That's a difficult question. I mean, everybody is so different, aren't they? Anyway, I would say, on the whole, that women are more in touch with their emotions than men are. And I've actually been told this by a man. So it's not me being sexist. He said to me, women, you're much more in touch with your emotions than men are, typically. I think some men will agree with that. Other men are very in touch with their emotions, are able to express how they feel, and others lock it down. So I think generally, on the whole, perhaps women feel it more. I don't know, but just maybe in a different way. Men are probably a little bit more pragmatic. Obviously, it affects them too, but I think they kind of go into the role of the male role, the protection and the fixing. So they're very good at organising. Afterwards, I've seen that quite a lot. They'll sort of do the things where, right, what do we need to get done? What do we need to organise? What do we, they're very, very good at that. And for just sort of, looking after people and making sure, I know with my husband, we always make sure there's enough food in the house. As if we're all going to starve, but that's one thing that he can do, sort of thing. What would I like to eat? And that's always been his way. So in my book, I write about, and it's about loss of pregnancy in my book. So I write about the 4 different types of categories, really, that partner tends to fall in. One is the fixer, so he wants to fix everything. The other one is the feeder, because he doesn't quite know what to do, so he'll just make sure you're okay and feed you up. And then we have the one that's a bit hopeless, bless him, and doesn't know what to do at all and doesn't really do anything and seems to do the wrong thing the whole time. And then there's the runner, because they can't deal with it. So in recent times, they might go out and, go and visit their mates or go and play a round of golf if they're so inclined, or, so they run from the situation. So those are my categories that I've noticed, and there could be other ones as well, but I thought that was quite an interesting point to share.
That is really interesting and valuable as well, especially for people to understand which category they might fit into, so they can start moving towards another category, perhaps. Yeah. What is your book called? Do you have it next to you? I've got to ask.
I did have it next to me, but I've had to move because the internet was a bit patchy. It is called Life After Miscarriage, Your Guide to Healing from Pregnancy Loss. And it covers grief a lot in there, and the different stages and what people may go through. So I'm in the process of writing another book about general grief now, which it's going to be more of a helpful book that people can just sort of dip into whilst they're going through grief, because it is really, when you're going through that, you can't really cope with too much, because your head is scrambled basically, and there's only so much you can put in. So I wanted to write a smaller kind of book that was just easy to read, but just help you through what you might be going through.
Fantastic. What's it called?
I haven't decided the name yet.
Oh, it's got just in the work name process.
Yeah, it's on my computer, just sort of add in bits of time. I haven't decided the name, so if anybody's got any great ideas, you could perhaps put it in the comments afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. It'll come. Well, you got someone else next to you, though. Something hairy is sticking up. Who's that?
This is my baby. This is little Binky.
Oh, hello. Oh, so cute.
She's a bit hairy at the moment because obviously you can't take her to the dog groomers.
Oh, yeah. Oh, aren't we all?
Yes,
I've done my hair. I've curled my hair today, and I've got jeans on. It's a really good excuse, this live lounge once a week, for me to put jeans on. I'm walking around with PJ trousers all day. But going back to our quite serious topic, and one of the most difficult things I think people are facing right now in families is, what do we tell our children? How do we talk about this, what's going on? And the amounts of deaths we are having around the world and in our own country and around us. How do we talk to our children about that? How can we do that? Can we do that? Should we do that?
Yes, I think we should, because children are very perceptive, and they're also very accepting of things. And I know a lot of the time we like to try to protect them. They're going to pick up on, they're very perceptive children. They're going to pick up on how our energy changes, and that we're worried, and our fear, and all that type of thing that we're emanating out from our energy field. They're going to pick up on that. So they'll know something's not quite right. And of course, they'll be knowing that something's very different because they're at home and they're not at school. So I feel we do need to be really honest with them and speak in a way that's not going to scare the living daylights out of them, but that so they understand what's going on, and let them know that there are people who are getting really sick and are dying from this disease, but we are healthy as a family right now, and that's why we're having to stay inside, and that's why we're having to be extra careful washing our hands and things, because we want everyone to stay happy, and we want the NHS staff to be protected, because they're looking after everybody. So we're doing all those things. So I think most people are talking about that. But when it comes to things like grandparents, they will be worried about grandparents, that they might die because they're elderly. But of course, they'll also be worried about you as parents as well. So we do talk about it to them, but in a way that isn't going to scare the living daylights out of them, so that they're not going to be absolutely terrified of doing anything. So be honest, and do it in a sort of a lighter way. That's the only really way I can explain it, in a more sort of rounded way. But then also hopefully with Skype and Zoom, they'll be able to talk to and see on FaceTime. They'll be able to see their grandparents that way, and enjoy that, and really make the most of it. And I think positive things will come out of it for them. But yes, we do our instinct is to protect our children, isn't it? That's the thing. As parents, that's our instinct, is to protect them. But it's a fine line as to how much we protect them. It's a difficult
protection and preparation is it merges together and has to move together, doesn't it? You need to protect them by preparing them a little bit, simply, because if we haven't talked about it, if it's all coming as a shock, it's going to be awful for them.
It's going to be huge.
And I think especially with the numbers we're seeing around us now, and they are affected, they will be affected one way or the other, even if it's not a direct loss in the family. I think we need to lead them into gently that this, like always, I think with children, what we don't do is that we need to let them know that this is an exceptional situation. It's not normal for anyone, and we will come out of it. It's a period that we are all going through, but it will go back to normal after. And I think even that children can feel real comfort from, because if they think that this is what it's going to be forever now, this is what everything is falling apart and nothing is never ever going to go normal again, we're not going to go back to school and everyone's going to die around us. We don't want that, obviously. No. But then we have another issue here in the Western world, don't we? And that's that we don't talk about an afterlife. We don't have any positive thoughts around death anymore. It's all dead, and then everything is over and darkness. So in other cultures, they can talk about the beautiful afterlife, and some cultures, they celebrate death, don't they? Because they know they're moving on to an even better place. So I think that's a lack here in the Western world as well, that we can't actually reach for, even though I've realized with age that more people than you think are spiritual, and even if they're not religious and go to church, they do believe there's something after death, don't they?
Yes, I think we're becoming more and more sort of open to that now, for sure. It's not quite such a 19th sort of a new age hippie kind of way of thinking. It's becoming much more well accepted, I think. And we do, I think, as we get older as well, we kind of realize that there is more to life, and that it, if we go to an afterlife, it's known to be a very beautiful place. And that for me was really something that was so comforting. So when I lost my baby halfway through the pregnancy, afterwards, obviously, I was in a very dark place, but a friend of mine who had studied Buddhism and gone into Buddhism said to me one day, Jo, the Buddhists have a different take on this. And so she explained it to me, and she said, sometimes souls come into the world for a short time, just to finish off the soul work that they're meant to do before leaving again. And when she first told me, I thought, oh, crikey, what's that all about? You know, I was a bit dismissive. And then, but it's the one thing that stuck with me, intrigued me, and I kept thinking more about it. And then I started reading more books, and I found it to be a huge comfort. I could reconcile what had happened with that, and it made it so much better. So I think you're right. If we think about death and we think about people going on to a better place, and okay, we're sad they're not with us physically, but they are having a great time. And if anybody has ever listened to Esther and Jerry Hicks, they are Americans who quite often channel from Abraham. You can read up on their books about it, but she was somebody who was being spoken to through her, and was talking about death and dying, and saying, well, why we, she couldn't understand why us humans are so scared of death and dying, because it's the most amazing place on the other side. And that kind of gives you some comfort, really, knowing that somebody's gone to a better place as well, I think. So yeah, it's important to think about. And I'll tell you what's really interesting at the moment about the virus is that people aren't being given the opportunity to do various celebrations of life. For example, in the Asian community, they have a different way of grieving. They grieve for 13 days, and they do various celebrations and things within that time. And it's deemed polite to go to the actual burial and the funeral. So that's been denied to people at the moment. That absolute, having the celebrations of someone's life. And I like to, when we lost our mum, we didn't call it a funeral, we called it a celebration of her life. And I think it's really, really important. So some of the things that I've suggested to these communities to do is to still have the celebration of life, but we have to have it in our own homes. So you can make almost like a table where you put the person's picture, or you put their favorite flower, light a candle for them, anything that reminds you about the person. You can make this sort of like little section, a little table, almost like an altar, as it were, and just make it a special place for them. And you could get your family together all on Zoom and have a little celebration. Somebody reads a poem, somebody reads a eulogy, if there's any surahs or psalms or special words or scripts from different religions that you can say, depending on what you want to say, this can be read out. And it can be sort of done, but in a different way, but gathering people still together on Zoom or Skype, and honouring that person and celebrating that person's life. And I think we've got to do something. We can't, it's just crippling to let somebody go without doing something. The other thing you can do is get a pot plant or plant something in the garden and have a special place, commemorative place for that special person who we've lost.
Absolutely. I think funerals are so important. I've lost two very near and dear, both family and friends, within the last 6 months. They were elderly and had dementia as well. So you are prepared for it in a different way, but the funeral is kind of it's just this peak of grief, and the farewell is so important, to let that out and let that happen, and just say farewell properly for you, yourself, and for the person you have a relationship to and have had for so long. And then after that, you can really, it is almost like you're walking out lighter, isn't it? And that's all, they are where they are. Yeah. And we need to move on as well. Yeah. And to not be able to do that at the moment, of course, is extremely upsetting and hard for people. But we also need to know that we will come through this. There will be a time when you can gather and have a celebration of life rather than a funeral necessarily, but really to make sure that happens, because I think it's so important for everyone.
so important for everyone. It's like the closing of a chapter. And if that person you love, you know, that you've lost has been cremated, you always have the ashes. You can keep the ashes for as long as you like before you do, you know, a ceremony or a scattering. It can be a year or 2 years later, but that's something as well that, you know, that you can do.
Yeah, we haven't done that yet with my auntie because we can't at the moment, and that's, yeah, it's, you know, it's what it is. We can't change it, but it will be done. And we'll have a ceremony then as well. We had a beautiful funeral. It was amazing. And then it's more like a memorial almost then, because it's gone quite a long time. We'll have
and that's something that's really interesting. I think a lot in the West culture, we don't celebrate the times of passing. And I know in Ireland they're very good at that. There's always a big thing around the anniversary of death and a remembrance, and they go to church and things like that. We don't do that so much here in the UK. I don't know about the rest of Europe, but I think it's really important to remember these milestones and to remember, you know, the first birthdays, the first anniversary of death, the first, you know, a year ago, oh, we were doing this, or 2 years ago, it was I found it really difficult this year with my birthday in February, because my mum passed in November. This is the first year my mum's not going to be around for my birthday. And even though my parents lived in New Zealand and I lived here, we'd always have a phone call, or we'd, you know, there'd be a card and things. That latterly, as they got older, that didn't happen so much because mum had dementia as well. Yeah. But even the fact of knowing that they weren't in the world when it's your birthday, it hit me. It hit me again, and I was just like, oh, wow, another thing, another memorial to get through. You know, another marker.
I'm sure that must be that. I mean, you can't even imagine it when it's your parents. But as we've talked about before, there are ways to prepare yourself as well, and maybe we do need to do that. But is there a point in your grief where, so I know how hard it can be, and it can go on for a long time for some people. When do we need to seek help? Do we need to seek help, and what is there, do you think, if someone can't kick back into a continuation after a loss?
Yes. So if people are in that depression part of the grief wheel, and they're just not coming out of it for a long time, and have been, you know, finding life really difficult to cope with, and being held down weighted down by their grief, then yes, it's really important. It's really important to help people through. And I often work with people through that. And there comes a time, you know, sometimes first of all it's a little bit too soon and you just need to do the process. But there comes a time when you think, right, now I really realize I need to do something about this, because it's just weighing me down, and I can't move forward. I'm stuck in this place. And then that's the time, because you're ready to think, right, I want to do something. I'm sick of feeling like this. I want to do something. And then when that's often when people come to see me, and I take them through this process that I work with, where I help them release these heavy, weighted feelings from their, you know, they're carrying the weight of the world on their shoulder. Let's release it. And it's not, and I think quite often people are worried about releasing it because they don't want to release the person at the same time. But when they release the feelings that they're feeling, they suddenly, life becomes clear. It's almost like, you know, you've got clear vision, and you feel lighter, and you feel more optimistic, and you know that everything is going to be all right. And you still know that energetically that loved one, that person, is still around in the energetic, you know, world. And I've had quite a lot of conversations with people who say, oh, you know, I still talk to my mum every day and have a little conversation with her. Yes, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. That's amazing. You know, who knows if they can hear us or not? We don't, but we like to think they can. And wouldn't it be great if they could, and have this little bit still of communication going on? So, yeah, I have I have a picture of my mum on my computer, my laptop. So every time I open it, she's there smiling at me, and I just say, "Hi, Mum, how are you today?" You know, it's just this little thing that we have. So it's important to really acknowledge how you're feeling and just go, you know what, I need to move forward from this now. And it doesn't have to be as painful as you think. I think people are scared of doing it because they think, oh, I'm going to evoke all this awful feelings and I'm going to be upset again, I'm going to cry. Nothing wrong with a cry. It's a great cry. It's great to release the feelings by crying. And you feel so much lighter, you know, relief after a good cry. But it's never as bad as people think it's going to be when they come and do the work. It really isn't. It's just the fear of doing it, I think, that keeps people stuck.
That's beautiful. I really, really love what you just said there. And one thing that I think can be really driving people to hold on to this is what you mentioned, that as a guilt in releasing, because it seems almost like you don't care about the person who's been lost by releasing that. So they're holding on to that for the sake of not seem arrogant almost to the person who's gone. Do you think a lot of people that's the fear?
Yes.
To cut the ties.
Yeah, it's a fear of cutting. It's the final thing. I'm really going to cut the ties. But of course, you haven't cut the ties because they're always there. They're always around you. They're always in your heart. You keep them in your heart. You know, they're there. There's always keepsakes and memories from them. So it's just healthy. You can't keep going on if you're feeling in a stuck place, heavy and low, and you know it's going to end up you'll be getting ill. So if you are feeling like that and you think, oh, it's about time I do something about it, then you will feel better. I can promise you.
Absolutely. I mean, it all takes different times, doesn't it? I can't erase my auntie's number from my phone yet. It's just doesn't feel. It's just there. It's there.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Keep it there. You know. Yeah. Keep the pictures, the phone numbers. Yeah, we can't phone them anymore, but that's still part of her there on your phone. She's on your phone.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jo. This was really interesting, and I think it's a very good subject to start talking about a little bit more and open up to. Is there anything else you feel that we haven't mentioned that you would like to say?
Oh, I think we have covered it. Just to say to everyone, the more we talk about things, the better. And also, oh yes, this is one thing that's really important. If your friend or you know someone who's lost a loved one, do reach out, because they will be struggling. And I know we often think, oh, I wonder if I should just let them be and to get on with it, or I wonder if I should just, you know, perhaps it's too soon to contact them and I don't quite know what to do. It's the crossing the street syndrome, when you see someone coming, oh, I don't know what to say to that person, so I'm going to cross the street. That's the thing that we need to change. We need to really just go, okay, if she doesn't want to, that's okay. You know, if she doesn't want to talk to me, or he or she, if they don't want to talk to me, that's fine. But I've reached out and I let them know that I'm thinking of them and I'm here if they need anything. Now we hear that cliche quite a lot. I'm here if you need anything, or let me know if you need anything. Now, if you're someone who's grieving, unfortunately, you probably don't have the wherewithal to reach out to someone. So if you're the friend or the family member of someone who you're going to have to just keep on at them, and just say, look, I'm here. I want you to, I'm going to call you. And if you don't feel like talking to me, that's fine. We won't talk. But I just want you to let you know that I'm here. And I'm going to ask you if there's anything that I can do. So we need to be a little bit more proactive with that, because when you're in grief, it is the loneliest place ever. And you feel a little bit like you're discombobulated. The whole world is spinning and getting on with their life, and you are stuck in this place of this untethered feeling, and it's not a nice place to be. So we need our friends around us. We need to know that people care. And so be brave and reach out. don't cross the road if you see someone coming along. Just say to them, I'm so sorry for your loss. That's all you need to say. I am so genuinely sorry for your loss. Are you okay?
Perfect. That is really, really good advice. It is hard to know what to do, isn't it? But just, as you said, be proactive and do ask until people say, go away.
Yeah, we don't want to be a pain in the neck, but there's
No, of
there's,
course.
there's a balance there. But
Yeah. So, Jo, if anyone wants to contact you, how can they reach you?
My website is light-after-loss.com. They can reach me there. They can find me on Facebook at after_loss. On Instagram as after_loss. And I'm on LinkedIn as Jo Tocher.
Excellent. I'll post all that so people can find you. Thank you once again. That was fabulous. A really interesting topic and quite scary. But as you say, the more we talk about things, the better it does feel, and it can prepare us better. So that was really, really helpful. I hope you stay healthy now and that you are in a good space for the time being, and then we'll see each other when we get out of this, which will be in not too long.
That's right. Thank you, Mee. It was great being your guest on here and having the opportunity to speak about this really important subject, which we're going to work on not being so taboo, right?
Exactly. And I'll be back here on Thursday next week with a new topic that we are going to talk about. So I'll see you then. Thank you so much for watching this, and we'll be back soon. Bye for now.